I was in Air Force ROTC in college, and getting to lead other leaders was something I've always been passionate about. That's why I became a coach to begin with. That's why I got into the coaching space. So obviously first started out like coaching people, then started coaching other coaches. And now I get to coach the leaders within my organization that now go coach other coaches and other leaders. It's kind of been this like every time I get to up level and coach and lead cool people.
Okay, that's cool. That leads me to a next question that I actually is going to ask you later. Sure. But how many full-time employees do you have, and how do you keep them engaged, happy, and productive?
That's a great question. We have 19 or 20 right now. We are bringing on a couple of more, so it'll be over the 20 mark. How do we keep them engaged, productive, and happy? Combination of different things. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is my goal as a CEO, as a visionary, as a business owner, is to have my vision encompass the vision of everybody else's. Right. I want to make sure that I'm creating a culture and a community that is helping everybody within my organization accomplish their dreams, not just career dreams and business dreams, but life dreams. So that's a big and important piece for me. And essentially the way that I do that is whenever I come up with a role or whenever I come up with position that we need to fill, the three questions I always ask myself when we're filling that and we're interviewing candidates and things like that, it always starts with that point is you want to find that right person and get them to sit on the right seat on the bus. Jim Collins would say, number one, I ask myself if I believe this person can do the job. Then I ask myself if they will do the job. And then I ask myself, do they actually want to do the job? Is this their dream job? Is this something that they would wholeheartedly put all of their heart and soul into to actually make it happen? And that third one is actually the most important question, because I could hire someone that actually can't do the job right now and won't do the job right now. But if they really want to, I could teach them how to do it. So that's probably one of the most important things for me, is really making sure that whatever we do as an organization, the people that we find to fill those seats, there's a ton of alignment. And when you have that, and there's all the other things, the good cadence, open communication, all of those things. But when you have that stuff, you end up with a team that doesn't need to be managed or led because they are self-motivated.
I am 100% with you on that. I have that too. Finally, do you use anything like EOS traction or scaling up as
I'm a big fan of scaling up. I don't know why. We've implemented EOS for a little bit, and then for whatever reason, Vern just gets me. So scaling up's the direction that we've gone.
Vern is awesome.
It's been great.
I'm going to see him next week. Where are you taking this business and revenue, like long-term?
Long-term, it's so funny because when I first got into the coaching space, it was so hard for me to see long term, because coming out of the corporate world, everybody talks about, oh, you got to have your 10 and 15 and 30-year visions, and I'm like, guys, I don't even know what is possible right now. So why don't I get my feet under myself a little bit first? So when I first started it was so funny because as a coach, I was like, I just want to make 6 figures, and then I ended up getting to a 6-figure mark in about 3 months. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm setting myself a little bit short. And then we got to like the 7-figure mark in about 12 months. And for me right now, I can concretely see how we'll get to about the 12 million revenue mark within the next 2 years or so. Seeing beyond that, I still have trouble actually doing, because I don't know exactly where it could go. Personally, I would personally love to take this business to 50 to 100 million. Doing exactly what we're doing right now, it's probably going to have to change a bit. But that's about as far as I can see right now.
That makes sense to me, why you would be attracted to Vern and scaling up versus EOS traction, which is amazing as well. But with your vision and where you're going, it makes more sense. So the podcast, The Shit You Don't Learn in College, which I love. You started it looks like in March of 2021. Is that right?
Not long ago. Yeah. I think April 1st was when we launched. Yeah.
So I want to know the following. I'm going to give you all the questions and then you can just give me all the answers. How are you using it? Is it a funnel to your services, to buy your book? Are you banking on sponsorships? What is it? What's your plan?
So right now, the podcast in itself, the podcast and the book are completely nonprofit. So we have our Shit You Don't Learn in College podcast, and we're actually launching the book in 2 weeks, actually. So the book's coming out in 2 weeks. And really my goal there was to just bring a lot more value to a lot more people. Any revenue that we bring in from the whole Shit You Don't Learn in College brand actually goes back to feeding children in Kenya and an organization here in San Diego called Shelter to Soldier, where basically they take shelter dogs and they train them. They pull them out of shelters and they train them to be psychiatric service dogs for veterans with PTSD. So they're saving 2 lives.
I'm all for that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so just so you're aware, my best friend committed suicide after suffering from PTSD for about 10 and a half years. He committed suicide about 4 years ago, and he was a Marine veteran. And so ever since then, we've been supporting that organization. So every dime that comes in profit wise from both the podcast and the book goes to that. So really, to your question, what are we using Shit You Don't Learn in College for? It's actually not business at all. It's that nonprofit of, I've learned so much in my life over the last 5 years of becoming an entrepreneur, coaching hundreds of other entrepreneurs to become 6-figure and 7-figure business owners. And I had to find some avenues to get it out to more people that did not have access to this information. I think the lack of availability of good information is what causes some of the biggest discrepancies in our socioeconomic world, right? And so there's a lot of people that can afford to work with me directly. And when they can afford to work with me directly, I'm going to take them to the moon. But there's a lot of people that can't afford to work with me directly. So how do I go create an impact with all of them? And that's really what the podcast, so people can listen to it for free, and the book, people can buy it for $20 or whatever. Like, they can get access to a lot of this information in a much more cost-effective way.
I ask this because you're a very vibrant, very well-spoken, thoughtful person. And you're also a business person, and you don't go into business to not make money.
Yeah.
But I've just realized that a podcaster named John Lee Dumas is publishing his profit and loss for his podcast online, which
he's been doing that for a while. He's been doing it for
2013.
Yep.
Yeah, he'll be on the show soon, but I'm looking at the various reasons people do podcasts. So another question about the podcast: how are you marketing it? And what is your subscriber goal? Now, you just related that it really pushes toward nonprofit and you want it to be a nonprofit entity, but you've also noted that it's in like the top 20. So you are
not thinking small here, thinking small here.
So give it to us. What's all the stuff? What are you doing?
The big thing with Shit You Don't Learn in College, the big mission behind what I'm doing, both in our high impact coaching company and Shit You Don't Learn in College, is my goal is to help 1% of this world live their lives from more of a place of purpose and love and less from a place of fear. That's it. If I can get to 1% of the world, then I truly believe if I can help 1% of the world live more purposefully and more from a place of growth and love and less from fear, we might actually solve all of this world's problems, right? Now, 1% doesn't sound like a lot until you factor in the 7 billion people in the world, and you got to get to 70 million people. But you're asking my goal from a subscriber standpoint. Subscribers is one thing, but we want to get to at least 70 million downloads. We want to get to the point where 1% of this world's population has actually been touched by the message that we're putting out there. So how we're marketing it, how we're growing right now, we're growing it by word of mouth with all the network and all the influencers that I've connected with over my last 5 years as an entrepreneur. And then we're starting to put some financial dollars behind it. We're going to start doing some advertising so that the money coming in is going right back into pushing it to more people. Again, the goal there, because I make enough money with high impact coaching. I don't
and what kind of advertising, like on podcast players or?
Yeah, podcast players, Facebook ads. One of the things that we're looking at in the near future, I don't know if you were aware of this, and I'm still not sure exactly what's going on, but Facebook getting into the podcast space.
They have to get their hands into everything.
Yeah. So I think that is actually going to be really big for podcasters. I think the podcasting industry itself is relatively small compared to where it will, because it grows slower. But it has steadily grown year after year, and it's much harder for a podcaster to become successful because they have to be so consistent for so long. You mentioned JLD, right? He's been doing a daily show for 11 straight years or something like that. Like, it's no wonder he's at the place that he's at, is because when you do it that consistently for that long,
he's hammering it.
You're going to be great. For me, I personally think that Facebook getting into the industry, while it may shake things up a bit, I think it's going to provide a great opportunity to open up the world of podcasting to a lot more people. There's something like 2 billion Facebook users, right? 2 billion people use Facebook. Whereas I think there's only something like 400 million regular podcast listeners on a monthly basis. Now you're opening up podcasts to a market that is 5 times the size. And on top of it, there's going to be opportunities for people like us that are not like media companies, whole wide media companies, to actually start advertising and growing our scale podcasting wise a lot easier. So I think that'll actually be really helpful.
Cool. And back to your impact for 1% of the world's population.
Yeah.
How are you measuring that? How are you going to keep that on the forefront? How are you going to prove that to yourself, to your team, to your followers?
I think the first step that we're shooting for is 70 million in terms of downloads or book buys or anything like that. And I think that's the first step. So 70 million is our goal from a download perspective. So is that going to happen this year? No. Is that going to happen next year? No. It's going to take some work. But our initial perspective is, can we get directly our word, our message into the hands, the ears, the eyes of 70 million people? Now, what's really interesting is, specifically at high impact coaching, there's a whole slew of unmeasurable impact that we have as well. For every coach that we work with, every coach that we help get to 6 figures in the course of their career, how many people they then go touch? Some of the lessons that we teach. And when they go help people, how many people did they then go help?
You can count their numbers, but how are they really going?
We know that on average, one of our clients who make 6 figures will work with maybe 50 to 100 clients over the course of a year. If we have 1,000 of those, we're already at 100,000 just directly from that for the year. And if we can continue to do that, you start to scale much faster.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got you warmed up, and I'm going to ask the question that a lot of people may or may not be comfortable answering.
Sure.
And I'm going to make it easy for you. So how do you define your metrics for profit in your coaching of coaches business? And what is your net profit goal? You can say it in a percentage.
Yeah.
Or if you're super brave, you can use a number.
So our metrics for profit, or how we measure profit, is I'm not a financial advisor, so I won't be able to get the exact details of the verbiage correct. But basically, revenue minus all of our operational expenses, including, and I think this is where a lot of people mess this up, is including my salary. So I do not include my salary in terms of profit of the business. I think that's a big mistake that a lot of business owners make, is they include their salary as part of profit, and it's not, right? I always think of my business as like, okay, if I were to hire out myself, if I were to hire somebody into my role, that's what you're actually looking at from a profit perspective. Our goal right now from a profitability standpoint is between 20 and 25%. Mm-hmm. This is terrible because I should know this number. We're somewhere around 3.5 to 4 million revenue right now. So whatever 20 to 25% of 3.5 to 4 million is, and that somebody could calculate that and let us know.
Awesome. Thank you for answering the question. Now, if you're doing EOS traction or scaling up, or even if you're not, hopefully you've broken down the goals, and there's metrics and KPIs, and meeting those goals, of course, is cause for celebration. And it's not that it's easy to compensate people with time, rewards, or money, but you can figure that out. But what do you do when you don't have someone that is meeting their goals?
You have a real conversation with them. I think one of the things, and this kind of comes back to the importance of, number one, having the right people on the right seat on the bus, but also having the right culture and the right energy. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we really focus on in our organization is 2 things. Something, number one, we call radical candor. So anybody in any seat in the organization can have any form of open and honest conversation with anybody else. And that takes a special type of person to be able to sit there and listen and take harsh feedback. But the more that you do it, and this is how we find out, like, there's a lot of people that are not good for our bus, because we are so open and honest that some people, it just rubs them the wrong way to hear harsh truth. For our organization to continue to grow and scale, we really value radical honesty and just very straightforward conversations in a way that people have to be open to the idea that it's nothing personal. This is just fact. This is data. This is what's going on. And once we get real on the data, what's really going on, then we can work on a solution. So that brings me to number 2. One of our cultural values that we really focus on is celebrating and appreciating big wins, or little wins even. We do it on a daily basis in our meetings. We celebrate and appreciate little wins. We have something called shout outs every day. Everybody gives a shout out to somebody else on the other team for something they did. So we're constantly appreciating tiny little things. So we appreciate and we celebrate, but we always look forward to the hard times too. And I think that's something that is missed, right? It's every single organization is going to go through hard times. What do you psychologically tie yourself to during these hard times? Are you saying that the business is going under? Are you saying that this is a bad thing? The reality is, and we all know this as people, right? Like if you want to build a muscle, what do you have to do? You have to put the muscle under tension. You have to stress it to grow. Like growth hurts. Growth is painful. But we all want to be part of a growing business, but none of us want to go through the growing pains. That's the stupidest shit I've ever heard. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but we're saying, oh yeah.
You are absolutely allowed to say that.
All right. But yeah, so we want the growth, but we don't want the growing pains. So really helping everybody understand that if you want growth, you're going to go through uncomfortable, difficult times. Because if you wanted it easy, you're never going to grow. So when the entire team is on board with this principle of growth and discomfort and having the uncomfortable conversation and embracing tough times, you start to realize, like, oh, that's actually the fun part, is like digging in and figuring out these problems to get to that next level.
Okay, so you said you look forward to those tough times. I'm wondering if you really mean you embrace them, or do you really mean you're yeah,
that's the thing. So people want to embrace them. And here's the truth. Nobody likes the tough times at first. But if you start to realize what comes after the tough times, you can actually like the tough times. You can actually look forward to them. I look forward to the moment. I truly look forward to the moment that we go, oh shit, like we're stuck here. At first it sucks. You're like, oh man. But then you go, wait, this is a good thing. We found the ceiling. We found the sticking point. Now let's go figure out what gets us past the sticking point.
I wonder if my team, when I say to them, because I've been in business for 20 years, we'll go through a tough situation. Somebody's, oh my God, I'm so sorry, or whatever it is. And then I'm like, you know what? We learned from it. We're going to move on. This was a learning, teachable moment. And I'm sure they're like, oh my God, seriously, how many of those can we do? The truth is it does catapult you forward. It just is very uncomfortable, which brilliantly brings me to my next question is right now, today, what are you as a CEO working on that's a challenge that's kind of rubbing you?
I'll tell you right now, our biggest thing right now is scaling and we're in the middle of solving this. It's actually being solved as we speak, but scaling our sales team. So that's been the biggest thing for us. And that's been the biggest, we actually just figured it out. So I'll let you know. As of this month, we're busting through that sticking point.
Are you looking for inbound salespeople, or which we consider farmers? Are you looking for outbound hunters? Or
right now we're looking for inbound salespeople. We've got plenty of leads. We've got a phenomenal system. So we just made a couple of changes that really opened that up for us. So right now we're actually literally just bringing people on. So I'd
love to know more about like how you're going to train them. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I have had conversations with staff of incredible coaches, incredible, opportunities. And they're so less than, to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I really need to call the CEO and let them know about my experience, because that is not how it should be translated. And some really big organizations, like huge organizations, big names, I just don't know how first of all, they're not getting trained very well, clearly.
Yeah.
So do you have a system for that?
I think that's one of the problems is once you get into that bigger organization, it's like, how do you actually make sure that everybody's getting trained? When you're my size, when you've got a sales team of 4 or 5, it's not that difficult. When you've got sales teams of dozens or hundreds, that's a whole different story. But for us, it's pretty straightforward simply because our organization actually does sales training. So we do a lot of sales training obviously we teach coaches how to do sales. I've taught a lot of different organizations how to do sales. So for us, it's pretty easy to train them. It's been a bigger issue of finding the right people that can do it and are willing to do it. And we've shifted that a little bit and made that happen.
There is a shortage of labor, right? And
absolutely.
Combine that with not having the skills to, and I talked about this recently with someone, not having the skills to know how to write a great job description with not only the duties, but what the outcomes are. And then not having a templated way of interviewing it, like a scorecard that really,
like being able to quantitatively actually take someone through that process. so that it's templatized. Yeah.
It's a lot. I think I wanted to ask you this earlier, but do you have a human resources department, or are you still, usually companies don't have one until about 150 people?
We've done a little bit of HR outsourcing to companies like Bambi, and ADP works with us. My wife does a lot of the HR handling. So we don't have an official HR organization yet.
Too soon.
Too soon for us, but definitely something that we do fractionally, if you will. Yeah.
And the last question I wanted to ask you is, have you been thinking about what your exit plan might be from this endeavor?
It's a great question, and a question that I have personally struggled with for probably since I started the business, right? Because as a coach, the business is your baby, right? It is my passion. It is my dream. There's two minds that I always have about this. Number one, I always want to build my company to sell. So that is how I am building the company. But number two is, why kill the golden goose? So the way that things stand right now, if I were able to sell my company, let's say it was like a 10x multiplier even, right? If I were able to sell my company for a 10x multiplier, I wouldn't. And the reason why is, and people ask me that, they're like, why? And I'm like, because what would I do afterwards? I'd probably just go build it again.
Yeah, right? You're in the position, you're at an age and a place in your career where it wouldn't make sense, because you can see that trajectory in your own revenue and profit.
And also,
when you get older, or if your interests change.
That's what it is. It's if the interests change, which is why I want to build it to sell. But everything that I see right now, 98% of my time, I'm doing nothing but what I love to do. And I'm making too much money doing it, and I'm helping too many people doing it. So why would I stop? Right now, if the interests change, that's the big thing. Is as I get older, as when me and my wife are talking about having our first kid, when we start doing other things, of course, 10 years from now, there's no way that I can predict what I'm going to want to be